All right, everyone. Thank you, Joy, for hosting today's meeting. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our global attendees. My name is Don Bork. I'm a technical program manager for the NetApp Customer Success Group. And a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Just so you know, all the phone lines are currently muted. We will take some natural opportunities to answer your questions. If you come up with a question, please type that into our chat window in the WebEx chat, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. Should we not get the opportunity, or if your question requires a rather in-depth explanation, please take a moment just to write down our email addresses here on the screen. We'll be happy to follow up with you if, like I said, we don't get to all your questions. So we have an exciting agenda for today, and let's bring that up here for everybody. We got a person here. We just need to mute here in a second. Let's see where we can find it. If Joy, you can hunt that one down for us, that would be great. Thank you. There we go. So today I am joined by my esteemed colleagues, fellow practitioners, Mr. Ketsi Afar and Sid Weicker. They're both members of our customer data, our cloud data services group here. And Ketsi, I want you to take a moment just to introduce yourself here.
Sure. So once again, my name is Ketsi Afar. I am one of the architects for cloud data services, and also joined with Sid Weicker.
Hi, my name's Sid Weicker. I'm a solutions architect as well, mainly focusing on integrations.
Excellent. Well, thank you both for joining today. So we do have, like I said, a rather interesting topic, and this is going to expand past our previous sessions or webinars that we've done on and focused around the IT administrators. So, Kat, why don't you just walk us through what we got in store for the customers today?
Sure. So we're just going to recap what we've talked about in the previous webinars. This is the third webinar for this web series where we're talking about life as an IT administrator. This one here is going to be focused around how a VMware administrator would leverage OCI and how we can expand that further with integrations. So we're going to be talking about some of the challenges similar to what we talked about in the previous webinars, as well as what we have as out-of-the-box connectors or data collectors in this case, and how it works, as well as how customers are actually leveraging it today. All right, and if you go to the next slide here, let's just do a quick recap of the previous webinars.
Sure. You see the next slide here, Kat? So, the last, couple of webinars, we've gone through many of the challenges that the IT administrators are facing today. They require that single pane of glass, that centralized view of all their resources in a single location. They're looking for that 24/7 availability of that data. The disparated or siloed tool sets they have make it very difficult and time-consuming, and they need ways to reduce the MTTR for their troubleshooting times. And then lastly, they're looking for ways to be more proactive than reactive, so ways to get ahead of those issues and prevent those tickets from ever being opened. Did I do a pretty good recap there, Ketsia?
Yep, absolutely. We also talked about the best practices around managing OCI servers, especially if you have multiple OCI instances inside your environment. So we started talking about daily tasks, such as checking data sources on a daily basis, as well as taking a look at the health server page. We also talked about some of the weekly tasks, such as performance policies, how to maintain them, as well as scripts that you may be using, such as the ones that we're going to be talking about today. And then we also talked about some monthly tasks, especially around device resolution, your annotations, making sure that those are all being associated with business context in the case that you have some monthly reports, especially around billing. And then we also talked about some quarterly tasks, so making sure that you are up to date with the latest service packs as well as patches, and making sure that you are looking to do upgrades whenever needed.
And that's a good point. The quarterly tasks, OCI is a rather, aggressive product when it comes to upgrades and in updates available, right? So it's typically about 4 times a year you're seeing these releases come out. So it's very important for a number of reasons, for security aspects, because we're keeping up with those vendors, for firmware and microcode versions, making sure that we're covering the latest capabilities in your products. And then lastly, for getting that new functionality. We all want to be able to do additional things, and OCI's development team is constantly adding these new capabilities, so you always want to be running the latest service packs or updates available for it.
Absolutely. Let's go to challenges. All right, I see it. So we're going to be talking about some of the challenges that a VM administrator would face. This is similar to what we talked about in the first webinar in this web series. But every single customer wants a single pane of glass. So when we talked about this in that previous webinar, we showcased how we would get an incident inside your ticketing system. So it flowed into ServiceNow in this case as our example, and then how we can actually drill down from that ticket into OCI so you can start your troubleshooting process and start diagnosing the issue. But at this point in time, with how we showcase VMware today, there are a lot of additional counters that you may face that may require you to go to vSphere and take a look at a deeper dive into that environment. As a result, you're looking at multiple tools again, and nobody really wants to go down that path. At the same time, a lot of these different use cases aren't just around performance troubleshooting, but are also around optimization and reclamation, as well as capacity planning and building. So we may be taking a look at some of the folder structures and how we can actually pull that into OCI as well, because some of those business contexts, when you're looking at certain VMs, maybe you want to make sure that these are only prod VMs versus DR, and you don't want to be notified on issues that are coming from those DR systems.
Yeah, so Ketsia, one of the thoughts that I have when you say this is, some of the additional metrics I'm continually asked for CPU ready time, right? So one of the metrics available through vSphere, and how can we get that information into OCI? So I think we're going to talk about some ways today how our customers can do just that.
Yep, absolutely. The other things that we're going to be talking about is, like, for example, CPU entitlement, which is actually part of this solution here. So we have some out-of-box connectors that are available as data collectors on the automation store. So one of these are looking at pulling, like we said, CPU entitlement, CPU demand, as well as memory entitlement and memory demand. Now, this helps you around capacity planning, but also performance troubleshooting as well. So, for example, if I ever had an issue where the demand exceeded the entitlements, I'm going to face some pretty big bottlenecks around my CPU because I'm not getting the CPU that I needed. These counters exist inside vSphere. They don't necessarily show inside OCI. So as a result, if I were to only do troubleshooting today with OCI with the counters that we have today, we're not going to be able to truly diagnose that issue. We're just going to say we have a big bottleneck around CPU, but we don't know exactly why it's running into a lot of latency. This is running off a PowerShell script, and it's basically pushing that data into OCI via our integration API. We're going to be talking a little bit more of how it works in a bit, but I also wanted to talk about the VMware folder structure. I mentioned it earlier today. Basically what happens is when we're talking with customers today around how do you want to set up what we call business entities inside OCI, this helps you give that little context around who owns these assets within your specific business unit or line of businesses or tenants and so forth. Inside vSphere, we usually see a lot of customers set up their folder structures in a way that works almost like a hierarchy. So we wanted to basically pull in that hierarchy and reside inside OCI. And I think it's on the next page, Don.
Yeah, good point. So, I'm not seeing it here.
Nope. It's actually on the slide 9. So you're on slide.
There you go.
Yep, there it is. Yep. So again, if you see here, we have a couple examples here. So you'll see name, OCI, tenant, name, line of business, A&R, as well as my name here. So we're basically pulling this folder structure here into OCI. So as a result, the tenant name is going to be tenant_name. Line of business is going to be LOB_A&R. Project Ketsia PA is going to be the business unit in this case here.
So one thing I wanted to just touch base on a little bit here, Ketsia. So the integration API, for our customers on the call, this was introduced back in OnCommand Insight 7.3.1. That's when we actually made it publicly available for our customers. So this is utilizing this latest integration API that we have in our product. So just for a little background there.
All right, thanks. And I think what we wanted to do next was basically just showcase how it works. So we're going to hand it off to Sid and have him share his screen real quick.
All right, great. Take it
All
away,
right.
Sid.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right.
Yes,
So
we can.
I'm going to show just the command line usage really quick, nothing too in detail here, but I'll be showing the VM folders part of the integration, so just that one part that does the VM folders. So if you call the Python script, I'm going to call it help. It's basically has your requires your OCI URL user password, vSphere user password, and that's all you need to run it, and then it will sync those folders. There's some extra options in there if you want some more flexibility, but I'm not going to cover those in too much detail. Now over here I have a screenshot of what our vSphere lab looks like, and like it was in the presentation in that one slide. So you can see we have a bunch of folders here, and I'm just showing this one VM that's in a folder. So if you were to run the script against this environment, and you have also an OCI environment, I'll switch to that. And so if we go to the Manage Business Entities page, and I will just filter to that tenant. So you could see it created all these business entities based on the folder structure. Let me see if I can pull that in. Right here. So we have the line of business there, and then the business unit, and then the project if there was another folder underneath that. So all of those are created. Now, in addition to that, I'll go and create a new query, and I will look at virtual machines, and then I will filter the business entity. And I'll use Ketsia's name since we're looking at that one. And there's that VM. If I click on it, you'll see that the business entity there is assigned. And from that screenshot, you can see there's the Lab Live 720 machine. So and of course you can run that script multiple times if there are any changes to your environment, and then that will just automatically update OCI. So it takes out a lot of manual work and makes it nice and seamless.
So, Sid, customers who are currently leveraging the VMware folder structures as you're showing or displaying currently, this is just an easy way to get that data into OCI and sync up all of that relationship, and then they could start using these entities for the relationships on their assets. Is that my understanding here?
Exactly. It's to take out all that manual work of someone looking at both and trying to match them and do all the updates themselves.
Fantastic. Looks like we got a question here.
Yeah, so one of the questions is if it's available on the automation store. We're going to be talking about that after this call. Well, when we start taking questions, Jim. But basically, right now it doesn't reside on the automation store. It's going to be on there by the end of this week, hopefully.
Yeah, so this is a little preview, Jim, just before that gets out there.
And Bill's also asked a question about the command line usage. It's not finalized, and there will be a README on how to use it and more specific options and more details on getting that set up when we post it on the automation store.
Right, and he also had another question. Does the script provide a way to evaluate what changes the script will make to OCI before actually making the changes?
The answer is yes. You can do a dry run, and it will print out more information of what it's going to set and any changes it will make.
Bill also asked if we could actually take a look at the command line again.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I answered that question. We're going to provide a README with more greater detail on the automation store once it's released there.
No, he actually wants to see CLI and run it again.
Oh, yeah. I did not run the script here. I just did the help. I didn't actually run it right now.
Okay. Any other questions?
All right. If not, we can go back to the your slides and present again, Don.
Sure. Thank you, Sid. Appreciate that.
Yep.
So again, this is the folder structure that, Sid was just displaying that we were able to bring in through the Python script, that the integration script that he has currently running. Right.
Yep, so we didn't get a chance to showcase the other piece as part of the live demo, which is pulling in those additional metrics into OCI. But basically, if you look at that bottom piece of this dashboard here, there are customers who are trying to leverage this as part of the capacity planning processes. And this report here is specifically looking around mergers and acquisitions. So when a customer acquires another company, they want to be able to see what those assets are and take a look at whether or not they're going to have any issues with the virtual infrastructure. So if you just take a look at the next slide, Don, just to expand a little bit more around this report, we can take a better look at what these additional metrics are. So basically looking around average CPU readiness, entitlement, as well as demand. And basically when we're looking at this versus the usage, we can see whether or not we need to go and allocate more resources to that particular VM.
And this is just an example, Ketchy, of something you've already been working with one of our customers on, being able to provide this data through an integration service, essentially.
Yep, exactly. So in this case here, this actually went into Data Warehouse. The integration API only allows you to go into the web UI. So if you did want this type of report, it would require professional services to go and implement. But you can build a similar view inside the web UI using our custom dashboards.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think some of the key takeaways here, I know this is kind of a quick one. This is building on some of the things that we'll be doing in future sessions around Harvest and around, more around Collect D, our capabilities for integrations there. But hopefully this shows you an example of some of the metrics that we can bring in through VMware, some of the use cases, the planning capabilities that you would get with these VMware performance metrics. I think it's important to say, there is reasons why we don't bring in every metric available. And this has to do with the scalability of the product, the responsiveness of the products that we collect from. We need to get that data back from those devices in a responsible amount of time so we can present those on your dashboard. So there's always a trade-off on how much you can collect for metrics and how well you scale. But I think we showed you some examples today of some of the metrics we can bring in through VMware, whether it be around CPU utilization or the folder structures, and this is all available through the scripting. This script that Sid actually walked you through today is not currently on the automation storefront, but it will be there, like Ketsia said, in the very near future, so probably at the end of the week. We're finalizing this up. This is really like hot off the press stuff, folks. We're trying to show you stuff as it's being developed, so you're aware of this. You can kind of keep this in the back of your mind when you're looking for things to do with OCI. The other thing is to understand that the integrations that we help provide, yes, they are available in the operational web UI. Some of the reports that Ketsia just showed you here, these have to do with the data warehouse side. They do require some additional professional services. Integration data today lives in the operational web UI for the dashboards and widgets, but it is possible to get that into your data warehouse reporting. It just requires a little bit of PS to get that done. So
you're breaking up there, Don. But yeah, yes, it does require our PS in that case if you wanted to bring into Data Warehouse for additional reporting needs. So, for example, you want to schedule those reports out, similar to what we showcased for the mergers and acquisition report. But also what we wanted to also talk about is the type of integrations that you are interested in taking a look at. So these are just examples of VMware-related ones. We are going to be taking a look at integrations that we've done with Harvest, for example, for those customers, especially around NetApp, who wanted to have additional on-tap counters or metrics pulled into OCI, as well as taking a look at Collect D in the future as well, in future web series.
Great. Thank you, Ketsia, and apologies for the breakup there. Collect D, we have done a number of webinars on that, but we plan to expand that into some of the use cases, as you mentioned. Harvest, we'll take a look at that. And please let us know, where the customer success team here is providing these webinars to try to help enable you in your success with our products. across the cloud data services portfolio. So let us know what those topics are that you're interested in. We have new releases coming up, so you'll be seeing some webinars around the new capabilities of some of these releases. So we have a lot of content coming, but we'd love to hear your feedback on things that we can provide you value, and continue our series around capacity planners and so on and so forth. So let us know those topics. Folks, I want to thank everyone today for joining. I want to provide you some resources here. All of this information will be provided you, so the people who signed up for today's webinar will receive an email with the links to be able to get to this resource, get the available decks if needed. And we just want to thank you for joining us. We know your time is valuable. We'll give you back some time. We're going to open it up for some questions here. And, just take your time, put them into the chat window, and we'll do our best to answer you. All right, so Ketsi, I see we have a question about BMC integration. So there is a current BMC connector that we have available. That is, there are links on the automation store for the BMC integration. If you have a specific question around the BMC integration or the connector that we have available, just let us know. But there are links on the storefront, and that would be underneath the data collector. It could be either under data collector or scripts, but there's two titles there.
It's also under support as well. This is a paid engagement with professional services that requires a data warehouse. So long as you have plan, it should work fine. What we are looking to do is build a REST API version for the latest and greatest versions of BMC. So in the previous versions, we only had access to SOAP API. So our best choice back then was to use MySQL, and that's why we went down that path to integrate with the data warehouse instead. But I think as of 9.2 or something like that, they now have REST API available, and we are going to be exploring that sometime in the future. Hopefully that answers your question.
All right, we have a question about roadmap items to provide the same functionality to AHV.
I'm sorry, what is AHV?
I'm looking to see if we can get some clarification there. So, Brad, if you can just provide us, we're just not familiar with the acronym here.
As in Nutanix? Yeah, so from an engineering standpoint, they are doing a feasibility study around Nutanix. So stay tuned on that as well.
So I would suggest also talking to your customer success program manager and finding out from them if they're get the information directly from your assigned customer success manager. They can follow up with you on the developments on that front. Okay, you're welcome, Brad. All right, so we have a question. We still have to input the business units on the VMware level to get that updated into OCI. Will the script be a way to do it?
So we won't be messing around with vSphere at all. So if you don't have any folder structures inside vSphere today, then the script is going to be doing pretty much nothing on our side, just because we don't see any folder structures inside vSphere. We're basically only doing a push. Yeah, so we're only pulling it from vSphere into OCI. We're not doing a reverse.
So I hope that makes sense. I mean, obviously you can enter the business entities directly into OCI. You don't need to use the integration capability that we're talking about today, but it is a pull method today. We're not pushing it into VMware.
Now, there's other ways that you can do this as well, right? So, for example, if I had a CNB that had all of these VMs associated with business entities, then we have, of course, our import utility, for example, to go and do an integration with a CSV, or with your CNB directly, in which case we may pull in professional services to go work with you to do the integration. That is another avenue for you as well if you don't have those folder structures.
Right. And one question came up here, Ketsi, is what is the project field typically used for? Right. I know what we use it internally for, but what are they typically used for?
So it depends. In some of the cases that we've seen with some larger customers, especially on the West Coast that are in the IT field, they usually use project for just understanding what the types of applications they're working with. So for example, our OCI application is generally used like an application service, but then you may have multiple business entities associated with the application. But unfortunately, the way that applications work inside OCI, you can only associate an application with the single one business entity. So for example, if you and I had, let's say SAP, for example, only one of us can actually be associated with SAP. So the workaround had always been using the project field to put SAP at the project so that we can both look, quote unquote, own that application. So you'll see that as an example. The other examples are just helping us understand between dev apps versus production apps.
I see. So it's basically getting us to be able to be both associated with a particular object, whether that's an application or an entity of some sort, right? That's our workaround to do that. At least that's how we've commonly used that in OCI.
Yeah, so it's very far and few where you actually have all four levels being leveraged. You'll see it mostly in USPS environments because they typically put the tenant as like the enclave department as the line of business. BU would be a subset of the department, and then you'll have all the different owners as the project field.
Excellent, thank you. So we have a question about integration with groups within OnCommand Unified Manager. This is a new one for me. I haven't seen this one come up before. I'm not aware of any integration efforts today. Ketsi or Sid, are you familiar with any integration effort there today?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything myself. That's a good one to take offline. Daniel, I would definitely reach out. We do have access to the Unified Manager team. They are located at the same office as we are today, and we have a very close relationship with their product manager, so we can actually, the CSM assigned to your company can definitely look into that for you. Okay, and the last question here is, does OCI recognize the folder structure in VMware? Do we recognize the structure?
In the slides, we had a note about that, if I understand the question correctly, and we will always follow that same structure. So the first folder that it finds will be the tenant, then the folder inside that will be the line of business, then the folder inside of that would be the business unit, and then project.
Yeah, so in that case, let's say you had 6 levels, and we only unfortunately have 4 levels. You're going to see the 5th and 6th level under the project field. So it would be the 4th level / the 5th level / the 6th level.
And the script has options to, if you want to cut out some levels. So if you just want to drop everything past the 4th folder or not, or include it, or concatenate it to the last one, there are command line options for that. Not to be confused, because we put tenant underscore in the names. There's no logic against that, so the name can be whatever it is.
All right. So the statement was more content. Does it currently collect the folder details and store that in OCI?
No, it just takes
so
the name.
Not the details, just the name of the folder.
Just the names.
So I hope that makes sense, Brad.
It's the goal is to really, because some customers use the folders to group their VMs, and we're just leveraging that kind of practice to just automatically put that into OCI instead of having to do the manual work.
Great participation on the chat window today. Any other questions? And feel free to put into the chat windows if you have suggestions for future topics. We'd love to, gather those for you and see if we can get those built out for you. So, Joy, I know we didn't use the full hour here. We will stay on the chat room for a while longer here for the, any remaining questions or things that pop up. I'll give people a little bit of time back to the day, but if they have questions, please post those in the chat window or shoot us an email. We'd be happy to entertain those. And I just want to thank everyone while we still have on the call. Sid, Ketsia, thank you so much for joining us today on the webinar. Joy, thank you for hosting it, and thank you to our audience for attending. And hopefully you found some of the data that we provided today helpful.
Thank you so much, Don. I'm going to just keep the recording going for a few minutes and catch those last-minute questions, and then I'll shut it down. Thank you.
All right, and thank you for our participation that we've had on the chat windows. Brad, thank you. You've been excellent. Thank you for those valid questions. And like I said, we'll stay on just for a few more moments here and see if you have any other remaining questions. If not, always feel free to reach out to your local customer success manager, the one that's been assigned to your account, and they can follow up with both myself, the rest of the team, as well as our engineering departments for any follow-up questions. So we have a question here from Chuck on the line, and this one's a little bit of a detail here. And Ketsia, I know it's a topic you and I have been recently discussing around sub-LUN tiered volumes. Not necessarily in line with the presentation today, but we can talk to it at some level.
What's the question?
So does OCI recognize sub-LUN tiered volumes?
Yeah, this is Chuck. I stuck that in there because I thought we had a little bit of extra time here, so I'm kind of cheating on this.
No worries, Chuck.
I know it's not VMware related or integration related. Yeah.
No worries. No worries. It is integration related, and it presents some challenges.
Yes, so I'm sure.
Within OCI, go ahead, Ketsia.
So if you wanted to tier your LUNs, I'm assuming that's what you wanted to do?
Yes.
Okay. So in that case, if you have those policies associated with your volumes, you should be able to see the auto-tiering policy still with those volumes, and you can annotate accordingly. So, for example, if I had a platinum service level and it's looking at 100% EFD, 0% FC, and 0% SATA, I can take a look at the constraint and associate the service level with that service level. At the same time, you should also see the vendor tier, and if you have auto-tiering policy names that are clearly defined with distinct service level names, we can also annotate that way as well. So we're basically using the annotation rules and automatically adjust that way. The other alternative is if I had a CNB that already had this information, then I can easily just pull that in via either integration, or if you had a way to pull that out into a CSV, we can use the import utility as well. But I'm assuming we're talking about that very big customer. In that case, I don't think you do have a CNB. So it would have to fall back into how can we leverage the annotation rules.
Got it. Okay, so it's naming conventions and annotation rules. Okay, thank you. Yeah. The reason that I brought this up is we ran, and excuse me if I get the term wrong here, there's some kind of an exception report that was run on one of the machines in our data center, and one of the messages that came back stated that there's more than 0% of disks, of disks in this volume that are not the slowest RPM.
Is it possible for us to get a copy of how that looks so that we can just make sure that we're talking about your actual issue?
Let me just see what I can do here. Can I share on this?
We are recording right now, so I don't think that's wise.
Nope.
And since you have so many customers on this call, I'm not sure you want to expose.
We don't want to share your information, but we could definitely take this offline with you, Chuck, for sure.
Okay, well, Robert Flanner has sent a note out to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I apologize, Chuck. I did not know which company you were with, but great. I do know now. So yes, I did see Robert, but hence why I wasn't able to respond. So.
Yes, I know. Yeah, you were driving at the time. Yeah, I saw that. So yeah, and again, I apologize for sneaking in here. I didn't register for this. I was just notified that this was an option about
awesome.
20 minutes after the hour. So yeah, thanks.
No, we're glad you attend. We have these weekly. There's a lot of different topics that we cover in here. And we try to make it friendly and open. So, your questions are welcomed, even if they aren't around what we talked about today.
Yeah.
Often we have many expertise on here and a lot of different disciplines. And usually, collectively, we can help you with whatever challenges that you're addressing today.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Robert will probably follow up, but I just wanted to ask on the side here. Okay.
No, perfect. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.